Good evening. My name is Randy Lauff. I'm a senior lab instructor in the Department of Biology, and I've been an employee here at StFX for 31 years. My job doesn't involve research, but I have a very tolerant department, and they certainly support the fact that I do research on the side. Years ago, in around 1996, I was an avid bird watcher, and I had known about sightings and courtship calls that people were hearing of this boreal owl, this rare bird, rare here in the province. And about that time, I also had met a gentleman named Harry Brennan from Pictou County, who is known as the Owl Man of Nova Scotia. And he worked dominantly with a slightly smaller owl, the smallest owl in the province, the northern saw-whet owl. And together, these two events, these two situations got me thinking that, you know, if the boreal owl is courting here in Nova Scotia, as people have heard, maybe we could document the first nest. And naively, I thought this was going to be a very easy thing to do. So I got some money, had a couple dozen nest boxes built. In the wild, they would normally occupy the cavities in trees made by woodpeckers, but they take to nest boxes quite readily. And so I had a couple dozen of these built and erected in, I think, the summer of 96 or 97. And then the next spring, just naively walked into the woods, checked my nest boxes, expecting to document the first boreal owl in the province. Well, I didn't get one that year. And in fact, it took me 9 years of looking before I got this photograph. This is a photo of an adult female boreal owl on a nest in the Cape Breton Highlands National Park. And it's very meaningful to me because the apparent surprise on her face and my utter shock at documenting this after 9 years of work. My feet barely touched the ground as I walked away from this nest. I was absolutely elated. Not that it took 9 years, but that I finally had done it. On that particular route, there were 5 nest boxes on that particular route. This was the first one that I checked. 2 nest boxes later, a half a kilometer away, was in fact the second documented boreal owl nest in the province. So that started my work in comparing the two species, the northern saw-whet owl and the boreal owl. Now, since then, I've only had another 5 or 6 boreal owl nests, and I need more nests for statistical significance. I'm comparing both the diets and nesting habitats of these two owls. And if you know anything about science, you need a certain number of replications. And so I need more nests. So I've only had 6 or 7 boreal owl nests since that first one in 2004. But this year, with the help of the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, I was able to open a new site in Guysborough County. And a friend and I just finished putting up 6 nest boxes there in what can only be described as textbook quality boreal habitat. Now, hopefully, the owls read the textbooks because next spring we're going to go there and I'm going to once again naively walk to that site and expect at least one boreal owl nest. I can't go back to this original site where I found this first nest, because the roads have washed out. Now, they may have been repaired since. I haven't checked in a few years. But sadly, the roads were washed out, and I just can't get back. Now, this bird is not particularly rare in Canada. It's a denizen of the boreal forests, and the boreal forests occupy much of northern Canada, but it's not really well represented in Nova Scotia. Newfoundland has a good chunk, and the boreal owl is there, and correspondingly, they don't have many saw-whet owls there. But northern Nova Scotia, and I found my 6 nests dominantly in Cape Breton Highlands. Northern Nova Scotia has scant boreal forest, but also lots of opportunity for saw-whets to nest. So my goal then again is to compare the nesting requirements of the two birds. Now, owls are very charismatic to begin with, and this bird is high on most bird watchers' most wanted list, and I've been able to bring several people to see their very first boreal owls. So that's kind of a feel-good addition to the research. So next spring, so now is the countdown, or now I always count down. I have 5 months before I start checking my nest boxes, and I have about 80 nest boxes up. Probably about 1/3 here in Antigonish and Guysborough counties, and the rest in and around most of the rest in and around Cape Breton Highlands. I also have some in Richmond County, for example, and some in Halifax County, where I had a saw-whet nest this year as well. So, yes.
It's so interesting, and I'm wondering, for those of us who are not who don't deal in this research, what kind of numbers would you need for your comparative study?
Well, statistics has never been my strong point, but so I have consulted with others who do this kind of work, and they're looking at, if your study would have 10 of each species, that'd probably be solid enough. Now I've got dozens of saw-whet owl nests. I had 3 this year alone, and most years I have somewhere between 2 to 4. On a really good year, I'll have 7. But yeah, getting 10 boreal owl nests is a challenge here. I mean, if we lived in Newfoundland, it wouldn't be that much of a challenge at all. And I should add that in very few places in Canada do the ranges of these 2 species actually overlap. And so here in northern Nova Scotia is the opportunity to compare the 2 species in a place that, one doesn't have to travel 1,000 kilometers. Okay, the boreal forest is not near any of our major cities, except for perhaps St. John's.
And what makes this particular, I'm fascinated, and I love the adjective you used to describe owls, in terms of them being charismatic. And I was wondering how, as someone who has done extensive research and has had many encounters, what do you think makes owls charismatic?
Well, yeah, good question. So, like most predators, owls have their eyes on the front of their head. Most prey items, most herbivores, have their eyes more toward the side. But even hawks that are predators and eagles don't have them quite as much aligned forward. And so they very much have their eyes oriented in the way humans do. Okay. Now, we don't have them aligned forward because of predation, we have them aligned forward so we can see what we're doing with our hands. But owls have them aligned forward for overlap in the field of view of each eye. And so they can very much narrow down distances much more accurately than we can. But so I'm straying a bit, but the charisma, I think, comes from those eyes. They're big, they're forward pointing. And most times when you see an owl, they're very stoic and they look like they're thinking a lot. And perhaps they are. And so I think people can recognize human qualities in them much more so than they can a heron or a sparrow, for example.
Do you think that they feel they're making, I mean, I look at this photo, which is very compelling. The stare is arresting, and I'm struck by the beak being open. And is that, I'm wondering, when you came across this, does that beak, that expression, that light have to do with the angle at which you encountered this owl? What is it doing in the midst of this shot? Like, what was your encounter like?
Well, quite frankly, this owl is probably thinking, holy okay, because, sorry, because up to this point, this owl had probably never even seen a human, okay, let alone have one open up the front of its cavity. So the angled line that you see on the right, upper right corner of the photograph is the front door of the nest box that I have opened up to allow access to the owl. And so I'm sure it is surprised, as much as we can anthropomorphize that feeling onto an owl. Shocked is probably a better word. And the open beak, I think that was probably just coincidence. It's not a gasp like what we would do, you know, but they do, all owls, as far as I know, all owls, when they're trying to be threatening, they'll snap their beaks. Now, honestly, I don't remember. I was on the top of a 3-meter tall ladder at this point, just giddy with excitement at finally, again, after 9 years looking, finding this bird. You know, I was shaking with excitement. I don't remember if it was Bill snapping at me or not, but that could be what it's doing there.
And so this nest box, so you had to climb up this 3-meter high ladder,
Yeah.
and the nest box is perched then on top of some support.
It's screwed to the trunk of a tree.
Okay. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes in this photo. Like, I'm imagining, this bird is shocked. You're on a ladder. You're trying to get it, and you're shaking from excitement. Yeah.
I've since calmed down, not a lot, but at least I can now work with the owls much more. Like, I don't even think I took this owl out of the nest to weigh and measure it. That's how giddy I was at the time. But I think I did come back later and did band the bird. I banned all the owls that I work with. But yeah, this one was full of excitement.
Well, it's so fun, you know, like, I wish we had longer time, and I hope that when people see this, they're able to ask you more questions, because just knowing, you know, the research that this photograph took 9 years of work and research, that you on a ladder, it's really, I have so many more questions, but I'm going to leave it at that for now, with the hopes that people will approach you later and ask you more questions about your work, because it's really fascinating to hear. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.